Okay, I think it's almost the time, 10:30 in Taiwan. Uh, so I think most of the participants are getting in the Cisco WebEx. So maybe we can have uh, begin to start our conversation, our talk. And before this, I think we will have hostage to introduce our director to give some remarks, and then she will after the director gives the remarks, the time will be passed to me, and I will introduce Roy, and then Roy, you can start your talk. Okay.
Totally.
Okay. So Nina, can you start to host the beginning of the speech?
Okay, good morning, everyone, dear Professor Cheung, and all the participants. Welcome attending this webinar on multidisciplinary research in healthcare. And today we will have Professor Cheung to deliver his excellent research experience. In case some of you are not familiar with this function in this web CISO, this software. So first, I would like to introduce some useful function to you. So although this is a virtual lecture, we hope we can have some action to each. So, and can you see the smiling face emoji in the bottom of the line with a plus sign on the? So yes, just as you can see on the screen that there's claps and there's like a thumbs up. So please try to click it. There are a lot of emojis, you can use this. So let's try to practice whatever and whenever you want. And moreover, please feel free to leave your questions or comments on the chat room. Yes, at any time. So we will collect all the questions and invite Professor Cheung to answer them after his speech. Before the webinar begins, we would like to invite the host to give some remarks. So let's big welcome to Professor Cheung, Director of the Institute of Allied Health Science, College of Medicine, National Cheung University.
Okay, hi. So can you hear me?
Yes, clearly.
Okay, thank you. Dear Professor Cheung and all participants, it is our pleasure to see all of you here in this online lecture series, Multidisciplinary Research on Healthcare 2021. This will be a series online lecture from experienced and renowned scholars to share their research experience. Today, this is the first section, and the next section will be held on next Tuesday, which is July 20. More information will be announced at the end of this session. We have known that in today's events, our audience comes from different backgrounds and countries. We believe this will give us chances to develop future collaborations and interactions, especially for our institutes, welcome diverse collaboration. Further, I will believe you will gain a lot from Professor Cheung in these research experiences. Welcome.
Thank Professor Wong for giving us the opening remark. Now we welcome today's moderation, Dr. Cheung Ling, to introduce Professor Cheung.
Okay, thank you. It is my pleasure to introduce the outstanding physiotherapy scientist, Professor Roy Cheung, I have ever met. I've been working with Roy when I was an assistant professor in the Hong Kong Polytechnic University. And at that time, Roy is already a mature and renowned scholar in gait and posture. Indeed, his research has been, disseminated via news and different media. And we all see that his handsome face throughout the media. And with his great success in academia, he has been promoted into an associate professor and full professor in an amazingly short time. And he has also secured a lot of grants that we cannot imagine. Therefore, I'm very glad that we can have Roy to give us his excellent experience in research. And I believe that all of our audience will find this webinar fruitful and inspiring. Now, can you prepare yourself in the emojis? And then let's give Roy a warm emoji welcome. And then we can let him start his speech.
Thank you, CY. I'm very flattered. Recalling the memory working together at Hong Kong Polytechnic University, actually CY is very outstanding in publishing a lot of papers. And I'm very honored and fortunate to learn from him how to publish something like 20 papers in a year. Or 25 papers in a year. To me, it is a mission impossible. Anyway, so thank you for having me. Let me share my slides. Oops. So Nina, probably you have to stop sharing before I can share my slide, please. Yep. Cool. So can everyone see the slides?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah. So as being informed by CY, I think the audience come from quite a wide range of medical professionals and allied health colleagues. That's why I try my best, not only focusing on my previous work related to physiotherapy, even myself as initially trained as a physiotherapist. So I'm also very honored to lead the discipline in Western Sydney University School of Health Sciences. So today I will share my current and previous work related to gait and posture analysis. And most of the studies are related to health. By the way, I'm notorious to be a boring speaker. So in case you have any questions, please feel free to interrupt, to turn on your mic and raise any questions. So I just want to give you a very brief information about myself. So as I mentioned, I am initially trained as a physio and I got a PhD in biomechanics. And I'm very lucky to finish my postdoc fellowship training in Harvard Medical. So I'm currently a registered physio in Hong Kong as well as Australia, and I also got quite a few academic and university service positions, as you can see here. So even though personally I'm not a big fan of ranking, but I'm very lucky to be classified as the top 100 most influential persons in rehab this year, as well as the top 1% scientists in running research. So hopefully I can share what I know with you today. So I would say the entire research career for myself, it is really much about gait and posture analysis. So perhaps the first question is related to why I picked this topic. So as I have been a frontline clinician for about 10 years, I always found observing people's gait can give you a lot of information, especially from a clinical perspectives. So for example, when I look at my patient's walking gait or running gait, I can basically generate some sort of clinical hypothesis such that I can be able to generate some sort of physical diagnosis, which helps, for me to determine the interventions for these clients. And the other most important reason is based on a movie. I think this is quite old, but anyway, I'm not sure if we have generation gap here.
Fortunately, even if you could make it through every other security measure, you won't beat the last one. That's because it's protected by gait analysis, the step beyond facial recognition. These cameras actually know how the agent walks, how he talks, how he moves, right down to his facial tics.
So, yeah, in short, I think gait analysis is very cool. I think it also, I mean, it's application is well beyond the musculoskeletal physiotherapy or orthopedic conditions. That's why today's my talk will covers 4 areas. So first is about running science. Second topic would be about patients with knee osteoarthritis. And the third and fourth topic is really much moving away from orthopedics. One is about depression, and one is about MCI, mild cognitive impairments. So perhaps I just start something I'm very, very familiar. So thinking about like simple mathematics or probability. So if you try to flip a coin for 3 times, so the chance that you get 3 heads or 3, same side for 3 times is mathematically 12.5%. So in terms of running injury, so in case you try to keep running as a habit for 3 years, according to large-scale epidemiological studies, the annual injury risk is indeed 79%. So by simple probability, you can tell regular runners who can remain healthy for a consecutive 3 years would be less than 1%. So that's why physio never worry about the job market, because there are always patients around you. And one of my previous research focus is trying to have to prevent runners from injury. And obviously, the running injury mechanism is multifactorial. As you can see here, I think a lot of previous studies has shown that running injury risk is related to previous injury history, the training intensity and the volume, or something unmodifiable like gender. And as I'm a biomechanist, so probably I will focus on biomechanics in today's talk. So I would say in the past 20 to 30 years, lots of scientists try to find biomechanical markers that related to running injuries. So some may say, overpronation of the rear foot. Some may say, the alignment of the hip in the frontal plane. But I would say, when you really look at the literature, actually the strongest relationship with the development of running injury would be ground reaction force. As you can see in this video, it is a computational model or the simulation of a runners running on a treadmill. And you can see by the right-hand side, the vertical ground reaction force. And interestingly, it is not the peak value of the force determines the injury. It is really about the shape. Perhaps I can further elaborate by citing a very classical study by Irene Davis from Harvard Medical in 2016 here. So she and her team actually recruit more than 200 runners in Boston area and follow them up for 1 year. And as you can see, some runners get injured in the observation period, some didn't. And they try to compare the biomechanics during running between the 2 groups of runners. So one are those runners with prospective injury, and they are diagnosed by proper medical professionals. And they are like 70 participants. And there are also 22 runners who did not injure in the observation period. And more importantly, they basically never injured in their running career. And they are classified or regarded as clean subject. So when they compare the running biomechanics between these 2 groups, so they analyze a lot of biomechanical parameters. And interestingly, only the vertical ground reaction force curve differs. So as you can see, the red line represents the average vertical ground reaction force, while the green represents the uninjured or the healthy running groups. I think as you can see clearly, the major difference would be the amplitude of the first peak here. And if you just draw a line to represent the slope of the initial impact, so that is what we call the vertical loading rate. As you know, biologically, our body, especially our bone cell and muscle cells, are viscoelastic in nature. That means we are very sensitive about the change in the loading or force instead of the absolute value of force. So that means the amount of the stiffness or the slope of this curve would determine the risk of running injury. And this concept has been confirmed by a few case control studies. That means high vertical ground reaction force loading rate would lead to a high risk in, for example, tibial stress fracture, patellofemoral pain, and plantar fasciitis. And I think 99% of laymen would say, oh, so Roy, you say that means we have to control the impact loading for runners. So I would say 99% of laymen would think, oh, then I pick a better cushion running shoes, then it should solve the problems. Interestingly, it is actually a myth. So in one of our previous research, we compared the running biomechanics with traditional running shoes and what we call maximalist. So that is a footwear model with excessive and very highly cushioning material. By that time, we picked a model called Hoka, so which is a very famous brand in trail runners groups. So interestingly, what we found that most of the running parameters, including the stride pattern and the temporal spatial parameters, are very much the same. Interestingly, the vertical loading rate is actually higher in the maximalist running shoe group. So that means the highly cushioned running shoe not only did not reduce the vertical loading rate, instead they increase it. So it will be just like the opposite of our hypothesis. So that means it will actually increase the risk of running injury. And more importantly, there is a large-scale RCT showing that wearing soft or hard running shoes didn't really determine or change the injury risk. So it is a very large-scale prospective cohort study conducted by a group of European scientists, and it is published in a very prestigious sports medicine journals, BJSM. So you may think, oh, so it doesn't work. So it is really negative, right? So I'm thinking if there is a strong relationship between vertical loading rate and running injury, how about we just design a program that allows runners, allow them to modify the vertical loading rate. So this is actually, the idea is very simple. So basically we recruit a group of runners. So they are asked to run on instrumented treadmill. So they are the treadmill embedded with force plate. And we just provide real-time feedback of the vertical ground reaction force curve. And the mission is to minimize or to reduce the first peak of the curve, such that the loading rate would be reduced. So it is a large-scale RCT published in AJSM, which involves 320 runners in Hong Kong. So after the experiment, the gait retraining groups sustained a much lower loading rate. And more importantly, in a one-year observation, we can see there are less running injury observed in the gait retraining group when compared with the control. When we try to quantify the reduction of the injury risk, interestingly, by just modifying a single biomechanical parameter, we are able to reduce the injury risk by 62%. So if you still be able to record the injury risk per year, it is roughly 79% per year. So by just changing one single biomechanical parameters, the injury risk is significantly reduced by a lot. And that's why I think these studies have attracted a lot of attentions and media coverage in a lot of countries, including USA and Hong Kong. So perhaps I try to make my talk short and also covering different areas. And I would just move on to the second part of my research. I think especially for those faculty members who read this slide, I think you may have a smile, because I think a lot of time, unfortunately, in real life, a lot of researchers face the pressure to receive government funding. And that's why I always tell my students, if you try to conduct a research in running injury prevention, at the end of the day, you may have to switch or tweak a little bit of the direction, because, from the government point of view, running injury has less social impact when compared with other health conditions like osteoarthritis. And that is exactly the reason why I also try to apply the concept of gait retraining into patients with knee osteoarthritis, only because I think it is easier to attract fundings. And the second reason behind the scene is my father is actually a patient with osteoarthritis, and that's why I hope my work can also help his condition. So biomechanically, I think one major biomechanical parameters that related to knee osteoarthritis would be knee abduction moment. So as you can see from these figures, so the red arrow basically indicates the vertical ground reaction force. And when you look at the arrow in more detail, you can see there will be a distance between this arrow with the knee joint center. And usually it would be orientated medially to the knee joint. And that exactly explains why the chance for patients with DOA having the medial compartment or medial compartment osteoarthritis is something like 10 times greater than lateral compartments. And that is exactly why clinicians usually observe a knee valgus deformity when compared with knee valgus. And these parameters, knee abduction moment, in short, what we call CAM, K-A-M, is highly associated with medial compartment loading, the pain level of the patients, the arthritis severity, the extensiveness of cartilage damage, and disease progressions. In other words, theoretically, by controlling the amplitude of CAM, so actually you may be able to delay the disease progression. So unfortunately, I mean, degenerative joint disease is related to aging. So what we can do is slow down the disease progression. For example, by delaying the joint replacement surgery by 5 to 10 years, that will be an awesome outcome. So biomechanically, I think so apart from my group, so I think there are multiple research labs that also try to modify CAM by a lot of different biomechanical strategies. And one of the most commonly accepted strategies would be modifying the foot progression angle. In other words, it is to control the foot orientation during walking. So as you can see from the graph, so this is a study conducted by a group in Stanford University, Peter Shaw, led by Peter Shaw. As you can see, by adjusting the foot progression angle, it will just lead to a change or shift in the center of pressure. And interestingly, it will just adjust the lever arm or the movement arm length of the knee abduction moment. And that may reduce the knee abduction moment. And as you can see, there are lots of individual difference. So the variance in this curve is very large. So in this graph, basically it is about to illustrate the relationship between the foot progression angle and the reduction of KAM. And I think the major message in this graph is about this SS condition. What is SS? It is the self-selected foot progression angle. So that means the effectiveness will be maximized if we allow the patients to pick the preferred foot progression angle in relation to the adhesion moment. And because of that findings, our team has designed another randomized control trial. So we involve patients with early medial compartment knee osteoarthritis. So the idea is very much similar to what I have shown you in the running research. So we try to compute the adhesion moment real time using sophisticated equipment like the traditional motion capturing, as well as the force plate embedded in the treadmill. So we just ask the patient to do whatever method to reduce the KAM magnitude. The target would be by 20% off. So this is in the middle, it is actually a graph showing the training program. So there are only 6 sessions from 15 to 30 minutes. So in terms of the protocol, it is quite short. And more importantly, during these 6 sessions gait retraining program, we try to gradually wean off the real-time visual feedback, so such that the participant would be able to internalize the new motor pattern during walking. And this study is actually evaluate the symptoms as well as the KAM before and after the intervention, as well as a 6-month follow-up. As you can see from the figures on your right-hand side, the knee adhesion moment is significantly reduced in the gait retraining group when compared with another group receiving placebo walking exercise. So the walking exercise group participants, basically, they just walk the same amount and intensity without the visual feedback. And more importantly, the symptoms and functions as indicated by the VOMAT score improves in the gait retraining groups, and the effects has been sustained after 6 months of the training. So actually, I'm not satisfied as comment by Professor Wang. I mean, a lot of researchers nowadays, they are thinking about, can we move out of what we are doing in the laboratory outside to the real world? And that's why, you know, thanks the funding from the Hong Kong government. So we are very fortunate to be able to work with Hong Kong Footwear Association, and they are also one sponsor in this grant. So basically, we try to use a wearable sensor, what we call inertial measurement unit, IMU. So it is a unit that comprises accelerometer, gyroscope, and magnetometer. And we try to use convolutional neural network. That is one of the basic AI algorithm to extract features such that we'll be able to predict KAM without the use of motion capturing system as well as force play. And this findings has been published at IEEE Trans Neural System Rehab Engineering. And the accuracy of the prediction is quite acceptable considering the cost for a sophisticated motion capturing system and the cost of IMU. So for reference, an IMU can be as cheap as something like 100 Taiwan dollars, while the motion capturing would probably cost, I think 3 million, maybe, Taiwan dollars. So as you can see, not only the peak values prediction is accurate, by showing the actually the continuous KM curve, it looks okay. I mean, it is not perfect, but you know, it's still acceptable. And that's why I try to build an smartphone app or tablet app to incorporate this real-time feedback system into a training model. So this is the video record of the app. So basically, we have to provide some background information of the participants and connect the sensors with the tablet. And then, yep, they're connected. So, and then they have to do a standing static calibration. Right after that, the patients would be able to start off training without the expensive equipment. All they need is a treadmill, where a lot of elderly or aged care facility would have these kind of equipment for exercise. So as you can see, if we click training start, so basically the real-time KM prediction will be displayed visually in front of the tablet. And the green line here is basically the 80% of the original figures of the pre-training status. So we also conduct RCT in Hong Kong involving very similar cohort of patients. So they are early knee osteoarthritis in terms of the KL grading. So they're KL grade 1 or 2. So I think the knee adduction moment here showing that there is reduction in the indicated by the blue line here, reduction of KM when compared with the pre-training, while the control group is very much similar. And in terms of symptoms, it is also improved. So that means actually we can apply this kind of wearable sensors technology in a lot of rehab settings, including physio clinic. So I think what we are doing right now is something very similar to this NEOA model. So I'm working with a group from University of Calgary and see if we can develop very similar gait retraining program for runners outdoor. So I mean, if it is outdoor, basically it is impossible to deliver visual feedback, and that's why we are going to change it to audio feedback by the earphone. So in the coming part of my talk, I will talk about something in progress. Actually, when I attend any medical conference, I love to attend to those talks involving some unpublished data, because I found it more interesting. Otherwise, I would just download the papers, read it myself. It will be more time efficient. So the first idea is about mood and gait. As you can see by this cartoon animation, so it seems like it is a general accepted concept that we walk a little bit different when we are upset or we are happy. And I have this research idea from a dinner gathering with my friend who is a frontline school social worker. I'm not sure if you are aware, the situation in Hong Kong is really bad. So I still recall at the time of 2017 maybe, or 18. So in 1 year, there were 70 primary and secondary school students, their children, who commit suicide. It is partly because of the high stress from the study. And interestingly, the social worker has to face 1,200 students in one school. And basically, my friend has no clue who to talk to unless the children at risk actively approach them. And that's why I think about, and this is the figures, not only about the situation in Hong Kong, so this is the American data. So it seems like it is also true in some other developed countries. And that's why I try to look up the literature. So it seems like, oh yeah, there have been a lot of data showing that the unhappy people would walk with some discriminative features like reduced gait speed, reduced arm swing, reduced step length when compared with their happy counterparts. However, when I really go through every single one of these studies, I found two problems, because most of these studies recruit adults. And as you can expect, there are significant difference between gait kinematics between adults and children. That's why I don't think the findings can be directly translated to the children populations. The other knowledge gap would be like the previous adult studies. Some of them also recruit actors. So they try to act the emotion instead of they really experience such emotion. And that's why the validity is questionable. And that's why I conduct another studies using AlphaPulse, so which is open source algorithm and pulse estimator, which allows basically real-time, not real-time, not necessarily real time, but I mean, it can just allow multiple person posture and gait analysis using very ordinary RGB videos. And what we do is to talk to primary school principals, our concepts, and we just ask the participants. Of course, we obtain consent from the participants as well as their parents or legal guardians. And what they do is simple. So we just use simple iPhone cameras, video cameras. Of course, we tune up a little bit of the sampling frequency to 100 hertz or 120 hertz, something like that. And we ask the participant to walk back and forth naturally without any instructions. And after the walking trial, we also ask them to fill in like a questionnaire, what we call DASS, which measure depression, anxiety, and stress. And it is a cross-sectional study. We recruit 23 students with normal mood. So the DSS score is 0.6. So for reference, the cutoff score for DSS depression would be 9. So from 0 to 9, it is normal. And we have 26 students with potential depressive mood. So I try to emphasize the word potential because we didn't really employ or involve any medical professionals to make such diagnosis. And that's why we are not 100% sure they have depression. But when you compare the scores, it is far obvious difference. And it is far away from the cutoff point that is 9 points out of the scale. So actually, we use the alpha pulse output to compare a lot of biomechanical parameters like gait speed, vertical oscillations, stance, swing time, and as well as the surgical plane of the upper limb and lower limb kinematics. And interestingly, what we only find a difference would be the neck flexions. So in other words, so that means the students who may have potential depressive mood would present with a greater neck flexion. That is a more slump posture. And I believe this slump posture can become a gait markers such that the school can basically readjust a little bit of the existing surveillance camera and provide a shortlist. I don't think it will be 100% or even 80% accurate, but at least this kind of simple measures would allow the social workers to create a short list such that he or she be able to interview some of the potential students at risk. So it is no harm at all to pick up a wrong classification because I mean the social worker they don't mind to talk to students if they're okay, it's fine. So in case we try to further develop this program, we may incorporate with some sort of machine learning algorithm to improve the accuracy. Another topic I would like to go through is mild cognitive impairments. To be honest, it is a very early research in my research track record. It is initiated by one of my student who has who is coming from the School of Medicine. So she has a very personal reason why she would like to study this area. But I'm thinking, oh, how I can incorporate my knowledge and expertise into this area. And that's why we both just try to look up in the literature and see how we can improve the current surface model. So these slides showing you some sort of statistics, like out of 10 persons, 2 persons will be affected if they are about 65 years old. And if you have MCI, basically you have tenfold risk developing dementia. And that's why a lot of time we try to favor early detection and, you know, a lot of therapeutic reports showing that if you receive treatment earlier, it is a chance that you can, you know, avoid or prevent the patients to develop dementia. And when I really look at the literature, I think one of the very interesting phenomenon would be the dual task paradigm, because walking is very interesting behavior in human being, because you don't really have to think, then you can just perform walking or running, and you can just share some of your cognitive capacity to do a secondary task, like you check your iPhone, you check your, you walk your dog, or you talk to your friends while walking or running. And interestingly, quite a few of previous studies have indicated slower walking speed may be a gait marker for patients with MCI. So that means patients with MCI would present a greater reduction of gait speed when compared with the healthy counterparts in both general walking, like a single task walking assessment, as well as a dual task assessment. So, like we ask the participant to walk at the same time to count or to do some mathematical calculations, like subtractions or serial subtractions of 7 starting from 100, like 193, 63, something like that. Okay, sorry, I make a wrong calculations, obviously. And I conduct a meta-analysis with my student, and we found that mathematically or numerically, the MCI group seems to display a slower walking speed when compared with the healthy counterparts. So for single task, it is 0.13 meter per second slower. For dual task, it is about 0.18 meters slower. And it has been submitted to very decent journals, and it is under review. But my argument in this meta-analysis is actually opposing this gait speed being the markers for 2 reasons. One is when we look at the MDC, the minimal detectable change in all adults for walking gait speed, it is roughly 0.14 to 0.23 meter per second. So which is actually like within the difference between, the difference between patients or people with and without MCI. And also, previous studies didn't really control age as a factor or covariate. So when we look at the norm data for average walking speed in different age groups. So as you can see, the average walking speed from 60 to 70s is about 1.34. While when individuals get older, naturally, because of aging, the walking speed naturally reduces. And this reduction is actually fall into the similar amplitude of what we have shown in the meta-analysis. And that's why I think we do need another solutions. So potentially, artificial neural network may be a good tool such that we can consider other hidden or unidentified parameters that may indicate or to help classifying people with early MCI. So before I end my talk, I would like to acknowledge my funding support from both Hong Kong and Australia. I also have to highlight the work is not done by myself. So I thank my collaborators as well as my research team members. And the floor is now open for any questions.
Okay, thanks, Roy. Your speech is really amazing. And I really find some interesting things in there, and I would like to ask you. But before that, I think I need to give the chance to our audience first. So may I know if there's any questions or any opinions want to exchange with Professor Roy Cheung from our current audience?
Yes. Oh, okay. I'm Connie from NCKU, the Department of Physical Therapy. And so I can turn my camera. Okay. So I have a question because I also a lot of research on the gait training and gait rehabilitation. And actually, I also have a group working with the app to evaluate the gait. So without any sensors. But now I'm curious about the study you have. First one is you have an app, and then you mentioned about the standing calibration, right? And I'm curious about the how you perform the standing calibration and what is the purpose for the standing calibration. That's the first question. And the second question is about the knee OA study. Because you look at a lot of knee adduction movement. But I'm curious, have you ever done any correlation between the knee adduction movement and the patient's subjective report? Because in the clinic, we do found some adduction movement reduction after training or after a PT intervention. But sometimes the reduction of the adduction moment doesn't mean they have improvement in their pain or in their subjective report. So I'm curious, like, do you have any data in this part? But yeah, to be honest, I really like your research and your talk. Yeah, that's my two questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Kelly. So regarding the first questions, I think the static calibration, the major objective is to align, because we have one sensors for each shoe. So that means we have two shoes, two sensors. And I think the major objective is to allow the system to understand the orientation or the relative orientation of the sensors in each trial.
Okay.
Because that will actually affect the the frontal plane joint motion, joint moment measurement. Because so even though we design the footwear, we just make a very small pocket at the lateral bottom of the shoe. So we can't sure the orientation would be aligned perfectly every time. And that's why with the standard calibration in standing position, we'd be able to tell or to make corrections for each trial. So I think that would be the answer of your first questions. The second question is very interesting. I would say just similar to the running gait retraining. I think symptoms is really subjective and multifactorial. And I have read quite a lot of previous studies. Some show that KAM has a relationship with symptoms like pain, like knee pain, but some don't, right? And that's why I think we for this kind of gait retraining, so we have to admit the fact that we are only correcting the walking mechanics. But some of the factors may not be modified. For example, the diet or the joint deformity. I think we have our limitations. But at least theoretically or mechanically, by reducing the knee adduction moment, the joint loading at the medial compartment should be reduced.
Yeah. From mechanical perspective, right?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Oh, the Professor Tsai Mei-Ling.
Okay, let's welcome Professor Tsai. So, Professor Tsai, can you ask your question now?
Yeah, I'm very happy to see you part of result from AlphaPulse. That software is open source, so also we use it. But I actually have a question about your retraining program. Did you patent or you do have some protection for the training program?
For the running gait retraining program, we don't. But for the algorithm for the knee OA training, yes, we do have a US patent under review.
Yeah. If for the first one.
But I'm sure that patent, actually it is owned by Hong Kong Polytechnic University. They will just offer you a very, very cheap license fee if you want to use it.
Oh, okay. Because I'm quite interested in your first one, because regarding the loading rate, because retraining, the loading rate is really reduced. I was wondering what kind of gait retraining you use to make dramatic changes for the first part of your study? That's the first question.
Yep.
And the second question is for the cognition problem patient. I think their gait speed is reduced. So it's a very, even the elderly also have a similar issue. So
Yeah.
do you further explore the speed related to the muscle mass, or is bone mass or some other issue? So there's dramatic changes in speed rate. That will be my second questions.
Okay.
And the third, probably this two first. Thank you.
So perhaps I didn't really explain clearly in my, during my presentation for my running gait retraining program. So I think the idea is very, very simple. So I, based on the previous studies showing the close relationship with the vertical loading rate and running injury development. So we basically, recruit a group of runners that come to our laboratory with the instrumented treadmill. So we ask them to run, okay? And then we just display real-time, step-by-step of their vertical ground reaction force curve. Of course, we explain to the participants how to interpret this curve. So we try, ask them to reduce the first peak amplitude, or some of them, they can even diminish or make it disappear. So I think that is the goal. And interestingly, we had another pilot study. So originally, we tried to control what sort of strategies to achieve that sort of reduction. So for example, in one group, we tried to ask them to land with the forefoot, while the other groups, we tried ask them to reduce the stride length by increase the cadence. But it seems like it is not really accepted by the participants because they may have their own preferred motor strategies. And that's why we try to allow flexible ways for them to achieve the same goal. And interestingly, I think this study only requires a 2-week gait retraining, but the results is sustainable for 1 year at least. And the amount of risk reduction is really significant when you compare with the epidemiological data. So I think it is very doable. But what we're doing now, because the lab-based gait retraining was conducted in lab on treadmill, and obviously it is a fixed speed and without any inclination. And that's why in the current projects, we try to develop an algorithm to sort of normalize or standardize when runners run on different terrains, different speeds, and different slopes. And it is really tricky because I'm not sure if you follow the news in Canada. The COVID situation is really hostile. And that's why a lot of experimental work has been put on hold. I think everyone should not be too unfamiliar with the situation nowadays. And that's why I publish meta-analysis. I think everyone will.
I see.
Concerning your second questions, I think we don't know. And more importantly, we don't have to know the reason why they walk slower. It is because when we apply the dual task paradigm, the participant, they will become their own control. So that means if we ask a potential patient to demonstrate a simple walking, okay, then we measure the gait speed. And we ask them to do a secondary cognitive task during walking. And we see the difference. So he or she himself would become their own control. So we just look at the reduction or the difference between the two trials. Then we try to correlate the risk of being an MCI condition. But I personally, I'm not a big fan of it because I don't think gait speed reduction would be only markers for the MCI, because, as I said, it is normal for natural aging to walk slower. I can experience that because I also experiencing aging myself.
So may I ask one more question about the wheelchair? So the wheelchair, do you use, how can you measure the gait change from the patient in wheelchair?
In wheelchair?
Disabled people, they sit in the wheelchair.
I don't think we can measure gait speed when for wheelchair user. And actually, we are now collecting data from residents in aged care facility in Sydney. So, but for that particular study, we only include participants who can walk independently. With or without any walking aids. So we include even patients requiring a pickup frame. Yeah, but we are trying to build a bigger database. But yeah, Sydney currently is under lockdown.
Yes.
So it is very slow, and I would say the working pace in Australia is much slower compared to
compared to Hong Kong.
yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, so I think we have another participant want to ask question. So can we?
Sure.
Yes.
Sorry, probably you're on mute.
Yes. Okay, I have to help her now.
Okay.
Good.
No.
I'm afraid it's still on mute. I don't know why. Yep, I think you just turned it off. Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Can you hear my voice? Sorry.
Yes. Loud and clear.
Professor Roy, I'm very glad I had opportunity to listen to your speech. It's very fantastic. And just briefly introduce myself. My name is Grace Wong. I'm in physical therapy department of Asia University, which is located in Taichung area. And my specialty actually is focused on pediatric physical therapy. But so when you present about kind of school age children, I'm kind of curious because according to your main report, that I did not. I want to make sure 2 points. One is you have one slide show you use the alpha pose, ALPH, right? Pose to record what is there kind of the dance motion, and also you give us the report which is present means the students with high potential of depressed syndrome, they might have some higher degree of neck flexion. So my question is how you interpret the for the therapist. I mean, how you interpret the result regarding to clinical implication. So it means if we see some students with kind of kyphosis posture or neck flexion, I'm just kind of curious how you interpret that result, because I remember other degree of the body posture motion, you did not find any significant difference, right? I just want to clarify your finding. It's kind of interesting to me, right?
Thank you. So I think a lot of previous adult studies, they actually, when compare people with high mood and depressed mood, so actually there are a lot of difference in the walking gait biomechanics and tempospatial parameters. Like apart from a more slumped posture, they may walk slower. The stride length is shorter. For example, the arm swing would be smaller, and also the arm swing speed is slower. And a lot of time, this kind of deviation in gait has been related to the functions in the basal ganglia. So it has been some brain imaging studies showing that especially people with long-term major depressive disorders, what they call MDD, they present some structural changes in the brain as well. But obviously, in my study, we didn't conduct any brain imaging for our participants. We actually don't know, but when we look at the previous psychological studies, they said the more slump posture is more likely related to the self-esteem. So in other words, those students with potential depressive mood may not yet have the structural change in the brain, but it makes sense because the exposure for depressed emotion is relatively short. So and that's why I think it would be also a very important study, because that really helps the frontline social workers can make further clarification or diagnosis of the cases, such that in case we can save one life, that will be amazing already. And I don't like having the false positive, because when compared with the fact that the social worker has to talk to 1,200 students, basically he or she doesn't have any clue who to talk to. But at least I can create a short list, for example, like 10 students per week, which is very manageable. But as I said in the presentation as well, I think we really have to further enhance the algorithm in the prediction. So that would be a very good start only. And I do know someone from Taichung. Probably CY knows her as well. She is a very good drinker, and I believe you are as well.
Yeah, she's also online.
Really? Cool. Oh, okay.
No, she's not in Taichung now. She's working in Chang'an University now. But her originator is from Taichung.
Chen. Is the professor Cheung Chen?
Yeah.
Yeah, I know her. Actually, she's my senior.
Just 1 year older.
Oh, okay. She's here. Okay.
Oh yeah. May I ask a second small questions for you,
Sure.
Professor Roy? Actually, I'm curious. Have you ever done a lot? The study related to children. For example, autism, ADHD, because that part is kind of a major, population for us. So I'm not sure if you are.
To Cheung, because she is the reason why I kicked off my pediatrics research. And I'm pretty amazed about pediatrics researchers, because the difficulty and time spent to collect one data point would be at least 100 times more challenging than the adults.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
I got it. Yeah.
Yeah, we for your information, we are trying to do something related to general movement, what they call
I know. It's
as well as the gait development across childhood. So we are dealing with another Mission Impossible. So hopefully I can learn from Cheung as well. Cheung, anything you want to add?
Hello, this is Cheung. Actually, we also mentioned about the ADHD, and more focus will be on the ASD, and this is also one of the topic Roy and I mentioned recently. So actually, we found some correlations between we just mentioned about the early general movements and also the gait deviation in this case. And for the ASD populations, there are some deviation, and it's associated with the severity of the social symptoms. And the reason we are more interested about this direction is because for the ASD diagnosis, and probably also ADHD, I'm not that familiar, it's also like my new topic currently, is the time of diagnosis. Like we wait for a while until the child has shown some like behavioral symptoms to determine whether it's a confirmed diagnosis. But like with the current trend, as you know, we talk about early intervention, early diagnosis. So I think the motor component is probably the goal for us to have some like a supplementary information to change the way to diagnose the child, hopefully to target someone in risk earlier. And I think this is something we can do in Taiwan with some clinical impact because of the coverage of the medical care. We do have the capacity to provide relatively like a cheaper treatment for kids who are at high risk. So I think there will be a quite direction to go for the general health perspective. Yeah, thank you for cueing me.
Okay, thank you, Roy. I'm done. Thank you so much. Yeah.
Thank you. And you can see how amazing a research topics connects people from different places and countries.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And Cheung is actually my Mandarin teacher. So in case 我的国语讲得不好，都是他的错。
I also heard that you have a speech in National Taiwan University, right? Because actually I graduated from National Taiwan University.
Oh yeah. I think I did that. Yeah.
Okay, so may I know if there's any questions from the audience, or if it seems that no now, but because I have received some questions earlier before the talk, there are some students or some participants have already imagined about what the speech will be, and they want to learn something from Professor Roy. Okay, so I think I still need to ask the question and let Roy to answer them. The first one is that a question is, in wearable sensor devices, which patients can it be used on? And is there a minimum requirement for patients to use the wearable sensor devices?
Yeah, I also read that questions. So when I think about it, I think it should be the researcher's responsibility. Just like what I'm or my team is doing, we're trying to maximize the scope and the application of wearable sensors. That's why I try not to only focus on musculoskeletal or orthopedics research. I try to extend my work a little bit out of my comfort zone and deal with like people with mood disorder, as well as like cognitive functions, as well as pediatrics. And I think if that applies to each labs and each researchers, I think the patients in the future will benefit from it, because I do believe there won't be any boundary for the sensor technology application. And what I have mentioned in my talk are just few examples. And I look forward to work with any one of you to make it better. And that is exactly why we are here, being academic and research, to improve the healthcare service as well as the practice. Yeah. So I think that.
Great. I love the answer. So that means if our students have any patient in mind in their research, they can always come to you and then to study about the gait and posture and something about the wearable sensors. Yes. That's fantastic.
Yes, so
and the second question from the head is that which healthcare discipline is often included in this type of study and research?
I would say
based on your experience.
I would say traditionally it is more about mechanics, so orthopedics. But as I said in the examples that in my talk, I would say you can see a migration from the traditional musculoskeletal work to different areas. So, and I mean, sensors technology is basically everywhere. So I would say 99% of people nowadays use smartphone, and each smartphone contains sensors. So yeah, and obviously privacy would also be an issue and obstacle. And that's why I think we should really improve or incorporate this kind of technology in our practice. No matter you are a physio, you are occupational therapist, or whatever disciplines, I think it is unavoidable, it's inevitable for that change. And it will happen very soon. Yeah.
Thank you. And the third question from the ahead is that what kind of patient situation and conditions that require a gait and movement analysis using traditional laboratory-based motion?
That I would say that is a very tough question. I would say it seems to be a conflict if I said a particular cohort of patients requiring this kind of motion analysis, because it can apply to different scopes or different sectors in the healthcare system. But given the limitations of traditional laboratory motion capturing system, first of all, it is expensive. Second, it requires highly trained technical support personnel. Third, the processing, the data post-processing is also very lengthy. And you have to prepare the subjects. So by putting markers, and somehow the patients may not be, for example, they may not be able to tolerate a long-term standing for the preparation. That may be an issue. But traditionally, I would say the mocap system is usually used in a lot of conditions that the eyeballing gait analysis is not really applicable. For example, a major populations that you can find in the literature would be children with cerebral palsy. So that has a lot of papers to support the use of it. But I'm not sure if you are aware, because nowadays some sort of traditional mocap system, they also incorporate with markerless analysis. So I would say that would also be the future in the lab. So we would, at some point, we won't require to put markers onto the subjects, such that it will be more simulating to the real world scenarios. And I think by that time, because you don't really have to spend time prepare, you don't really have to do a lot of post-processing stuff like labeling the markers, then I think the application would be much wider than what we are doing right now. Because a lot of hospitals, they may not consider traditional motion capture because they don't have space, they don't have funding to buy the equipment, they don't have funding to support or sustain the technical people in the lab. It is a huge challenge to maintain a mocap lab in a clinical settings, to be honest. And that's why a lot of countries, they try to collaborate with university laboratory, such that if indicated, they send the patients to the lab. And it is actually a win-win situation, for both hospital, because they can have the analysis at a much cheaper cost. And at the same time, the laboratory has
data
to collect clinical data from real patients. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So I think I have some time to ask my own question. Okay, actually, I'm doing psychosocial studies. So actually, I'm really interested in your study on the gait, your posture prediction on the mood. So I may be distracted that I did not hear how when you measure the posture of these students. What I mean is that you mentioned about the neck flexions are different. And what's the time point of the neck flexion? Or you don't have it?
We basically average the kinematics, for example, the neck flexion within a gait cycle. And we take the mean value of each gait cycle as the parameters to be compared. But it can be different. I mean, if you like, and if it is indicated, we can even compare step by step, or even an amplitude. For example, if you are interested in look at the knee flexion angle, for example, at initial contact or heel strike, so we can extract this data for you. But I mean, we analyze neck flexions within the gait cycle only
But
because
I'm just thinking about what kind of activities or scenarios they're making the gait.
Oh, so we just asked the participant to walk along the hallway, back and forth, and we capture the video at the side. And no instructions, we won't tell this.
Okay, so it's in a laboratory situation. It's not a real life situation.
It's in school. So we measure everything at school.
Okay, but do you set up a room for it, or you ask them to walk outside? Or I'm thinking about the scenario when they make the gates.
I see your point. So we collect the data from 3 primary schools in Hong Kong. So I think the environment are slightly different. I can recall 2 of them. We collect data in the an assembly hall, which is like a big space. And another one, we collect the data in an activity room, which is still quite big. I mean, in Hong Kong standard. I mean, yeah, but there won't be any instructions. So basically, we ask them, "Oh, you just naturally walk back and forth until we call you to stop."
Oh, okay, I got it.
And we take out all the movement 1 meter away from the turning, because if you make a turn, basically you have to accelerate and decelerate. That would also influence the kinematics, right? That's why we only take the middle 8 meter out of the 10 meter walkway data. So we cut off the margin 1 meter at each side.
Okay. And you got the DAS score before they walk, right?
Not necessarily. So we randomize the sequence. So there are only 2 tests, the DAS score as well as the walking assessment. So we randomize the sequence. So it can be walking first and DAS, or DAS then walking.
Okay, but basically it's almost at the same time, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Literally, yes. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
May I know if there's any more question you want to ask from the audience? Or I think because we have been torturing Roy to give a long...
No. I am enjoying it. And I'm leaving my email at the chat room. So in case you have a question or a few questions later, feel free to shoot me an email.
Yes, sure. Thank you for your kindness. Okay, so I think it's almost the time, because it's 11:15 now. Although our original time is set at 12, but I think if there's no question, then we can have an earlier stop. And given that Roy has provided his email, so everybody can email him, bombard him. Try your best to bombard him.
Sure.
To next question. Okay. So now, can we at the last give a emoji to thanks Roy for giving this inspiring and amazing speech, and hope that we in the future will have more chance to collaborate.
Yep. Thank you for having me again.
Yes. Thank you.
And we'll keep in touch.
Yes, keep in touch.